The Mystery of the Tamam Shud Case, Australia, 1948. Somerton Beach wakes slowly, like a shell-pale eyelid lifting to the brittle sunlight of a South Australian dawn. The trams have not yet begun their rattling pilgrimage from Adelaide, and the surf rolls its muffled syllables onto sand still pocked by last night's wind. At the high tide mark, a solitary shape lies slumped against a low seawall, legs stretched, ankles neatly crossed, head propped as if watching a horizon only. He can see. His suit is pressed, shoes polished, necktie knotted with deliberate care. He looks at first glance like a gentleman who simply drifted into sleep while listening to the slow metronome of waves, but death can disguise itself as repose, and on the first day of December 1948, that disguise grips the shoreline. The man's pulse has stilled, his skin has cooled, and when police lift one stiffened arm, they find no wallet, no travel papers, no house key, nothing to tether him to any map or memory. Searches will unveil an immaculate suitcase locked at Adelaide railway station, tags peeled away, a hidden trouser pocket will yield a scrap of thin paper the size of a postage stamp torn from a rare edition of Woomera, bearing two Persian words, Tamám Shud, it is finished. Across 75 years, the Somerton Man, as headlines will crown him, refuses to sign his name. Photographs of his enigmatic half-smile become ink blots onto which nations project espionage, forbidden love, Cold War poison craft, untraceable suicide codes scribbled on the inside cover of a discarded baffle. Cryptanalysts, witnesses recall a mysterious woman fainting at the morgue, a missing sailor, whispers of microdots and Soviet couriers. Yet every path snaps shut like a sprung mousetrap, leaving detectives clutching only air scented faintly of aftershave and tobacco. Tonight we walk that beach again, 8 chapters, each a step deeper into salt-flecked riddles where evidence corrodes under moonlight and rumor grows barnacles thicker than fact. We will sift autopsy notes, train timetables, clandestine radio schedules, and the fractured recollections of those who looked too long at the dead man's placid mask and found themselves blinking at their own reflection. Perhaps identity is the last suit de Mendon's, custom-tailored in silence. Perhaps truth, like seawater, rearranges itself each time we cup it in our hands. Come closer. The sand is cool, the surf patient, and the scrap of Persian verse still flutters, unseen somewhere between the soles of your shoes and the sky's first paling star. Listen for a single heartbeat beneath the roar of history. If you hear it, follow. If you do not, follow anyway. Some mysteries demand faith before they grant revelation. Chapter 1, A Corpse in Perfect Posture, Dawn, December 1st, 1948. Somerton Beach exudes that peculiar hush found only in the thin hour between fishermen leaving and lifeguards arriving. 2 apprentice jockeys, John Lyons and Gordon Straps, clatter down the seawall steps for an early swim. Lyons notices the man first, coat and polished Oxfords absurd against the sand. He jokes to Straps that the stranger must be too well dressed to be drunk, yet Anise nibbles the jest's edges. Why would a sober gentleman nap where high tide will soon erase footprints? Lyons steps closer, calling out. No answer. He notes curious details. The man's right arm rests along his torso, left arm bent, fingers loosely curled as if holding a cigarette now vanished. A half-smoked Kensitas lies on the lapel, outward of the wind's likely drift. Lyons flicks the cigarette away, reasoning it might scorch the wool suit if still lit. Straps suggests they haul the fellow upright. Lyons shakes his head. Something about the posture feels terminal, an actor's final tableau, curtain already fallen. Police Constable Moss arrives 15 minutes later. He files the first official observations. Male, estimated age 45, athletic build, clean-shaven. Brown hair beginning to gray, hazel eyes half-lidded in expressionless calm. No marks of violence, no sand beneath fingernails, Pockets contain a railway ticket from Adelaide to Henley Beach never used. A bus ticket to Glenelg Pier unpunched. An American brand aluminum cone. A half-empty pack of Army Club cigarettes, swapped with Kensitas. A box of Bryant and May matches. And crucially, no wallet. Labels have been cut from inside coat, trousers, shirt, undershirt. The policeman glanced at the sea, half expecting it to draw back another wave and reveal a matching wallet bobbing like a guilty conscience. It does not oblige. By noon the body reaches the Adelaide City morgue, where pathologist John Burton Cleland conducts an autopsy that will feed rumour for decades. The stomach is distended not with seawater, but with half-digested pasty then, congested with blood. The spleen is enlarged, the liver engorged. The heart shows unusual congestion of the right side. Cleland notes congestion in brain and kidneys, yet no obvious poison. He scrawls, death likely due to cardiac failure, possibly induced by unknown poison, but tests for barbiturates and common toxins return negative. If poison it was, then one advanced enough to leave no chemical fingerprints. Police photograph. The dead man's face before embalming. Newspapers print the image alongside headlines. Mystery man found dead on beach. The city shrugs. Suicides have washed ashore before, yet the absence of identity pricks the press's curiosity. A week later, when a small rolled-up pocket is discovered in the waistband of the trousers missed in initial searches, the narrative sharpens. Officers tease out a tightly folded slip of paper. 2 words, Persian transliteration, black serif. Font Tamishud.it is finished. Reporters descend on libraries. The phrase appears only at the end of certain editions of Edward Fitzgerald's translation of Omar. S. Printed in exotic Adelaide by Whitcomb and Toombs, police. Broadcast a request. Any owner of a missing its final page should step forward. Weeks pass. No book appears. Meanwhile, the corpse waits first in freezer, then in plaster death mask, then in a hermetically sealed zinc coffin stored upright in a morgue alcove as space runs scarce, his face plaster smooth and mustache-free, and like many Australian men of the era, both invites sympathy and repels certainty. People queue to view the death mask. Some claim recognition only to rescind days later when families protest missing fathers found alive. On January 14, 1949, a new lead surfaces. A local jeweler, Ronald Francis, steps into the Adelaide detective office carrying a well-worn copy of the. He explains the book appeared mysteriously on the back seat of his Hillman Minx sedan, which he had left unlocked near Glenelg the night after the body was found. Francis assumed it belonged to a passenger, but when his brother-in-law flicked through the volume over Christmas, he noticed the final words. Shud had been torn out. Police matched the torn edge to the scrap from the corpse's pocket. A perfect fit, fibers aligning like halves of a severed whisper. Inside the book's back cover lurks a penciled code, 5 lines of seemingly random capital letters with occasional crossings out, above them faint indentations from a telephone number. Cryptographers from Navy intelligence examine the letters, concluding the pattern defies simple substitution but bears the cadence of poetry, perhaps an acrostic, initial letters of words lost to time. The phone number leads to a nurse living less than a kilometer from where the body was found. Her name suppressed in early reports as Jestin is Jessica Ellen Thompson. When detectives show her the plaster bust, she nearly faints, yet insists. She does not know the man. She does admit giving a copy of the to an army engineer, Alf Boxall, during the war. Boxall is located alive and decidedly not the Somerton Man. His copy of the book remains intact. Detectives leave Jessica's flat unconvinced by her denials, but lacking cause to press harder. Public fascination now burns white-hot. Was the nurse a wartime lover? Did Soviet or British intelligence recruit the man employing the poetic text as cipher key? Boxall served in Army water transport useful for covert harbor movements. Jessica had studied nursing at the Royal North Shore Hospital Strategic for Secrets, and Glenelg is spitting distance from Woomera rocket range, soon to be crowned jewel of Commonwealth missile trials. Still, evidence refuses to gel. Months turn 2 years. Jessica marries, births a son with calf muscles and ears uncannily resembling the Somerton Man's. Rumors swirl of genetic inheritance. The zinc coffin is buried in West Terrace Cemetery under a headstone reading simply Somerton Man died December 1st, 1948. Flowers appear periodically, colored, raining under harsh sun. Visitor unseen. Police files thicken, then gather dust. Witness memories blur like salt-faded ink, yet clues remain, waiting for hands unafraid of paper-cut ghosts. In Chapter 2 we will rewind to wartime Sydney bars where spy catchers and Soviet couriers swapped passwords disguised as chance toasts. And a young nurse learned Persian verse by heart for reasons she never confessed. Keep your close listener, the next quatrain may hide in plain sight. Chapter 2, Ciphered Heartbeats in Wartime Sydney. Sydney, 1943. The city is a restless hinge between hemispheres, a hinge that creaks with troop transports and rattles with blackout trams. American GIs swagger down Maclay Street in Tailored khaki, and dock workers unloading Liberty ships swap camel packs for stories half melted by rum. At Potts Point's dimly lit Clifton Gardens Hotel, the air smells of damp wool, spilled stout, and something sharper secrets dissolved in gin. Jessica Ellen Harkness, not yet Thompson, enters the bar one July evening in a pressed nurse's uniform. She has spent 16 hours stitching shrapnel wounds and dosing morphine in the Royal North Shore casualty ward. An orderly dared her to join the Saturday dance after shift. She comes because war has taught her that laughter, like plasma, must be transfused before bodies go cold. The band plays Paper Doll, and the parquet floor vibrates with boots heavy as gilt. The bar stands Alf Boxall, water transport corporal turned intelligence courier. Though his uniform brass tells only half the tale, he nurses a whiskey. Flipping through a pocket anthology of Omar, translated by Edward Fitzgerald, poetry, he claims, steadies his compass. Jessica orders lemonade spiked with gin. Boxall quotes a quatrain about roses and ruin. She recites the next stanza in flawless cadence, the Persian words learned during nursing lectures from an eccentric professor who insisted poetry sharpens bedside empathy. Boxall's eyebrows rise, few can parry. On the fly, fewer still. With vowels cut from the original Farsi, conversation ignites. Outside, blackout wardens hush loiterers. Inside, Boxall scribbles his number on a tram ticket, slipping it between Jessica's knuckles along with the "Keep the book, you've earned it." She tucks it into her purse between brass safety pins and a file of digitalis. Hours later, above the harbor, tracer round stitch phosphorescent seams across sky, but Jessica walks home smiling, the poem's verses hum fresh in her pulse. Rumor drifts like jazz smoke. The bar doubles as a listening post where naval intelligence eavesdrops on officers whose tongues loosen under rationed bourbon. Boxall is part of a small cipher unit decrypting Japanese radio, delivering sealed canisters to the signals hut at Garden Island, ferried in grey-painted launches skimming moonlit swells. Jessica does not ask. Boxall does not tell their affair. Blooms in gaps between raids, a clandestine garden fertilized by urgency. One evening in September, Boxall arrives at Jessica's shared flat, cheeks flushed with more than wine. He asks her to recite the poem beginning here with a loaf of bread beneath the bough. She does so, voice low. He records the cadence on a pocket wire recorder disguised as a cigarette case. Later, analysts strip vowel lengths to generate one-time pad keys. S meter repurposed for war. Jessica suspects something when Boxall's handwriting grows cramped, pockets full of microfilms sealed in condoms, but she swallows curiosity like bitter quinine. By 1945, the tide shifts. Victory in the Pacific is a matter of weeks. Intelligence. Branches reshuffle. Boxall's unit dissolves into civilian anonymity. On their last night together, he presses a new copy of the into Jessica's palms, this one leather-bound, gold-embossed. Inside the back cover he pencils an acrostic of initial letters, TOMORROWISANOTHERCOD. He kisses her at Milson's Point under blackout lamps gone obsolete, promising a future unencrypted. War ends. Promises misfile. Boxall transfers to the Merchant Navy, then disappears into the labyrinth of peacetime bureaucracy. Jessica moves to Melbourne to finish midwifery, returns in 46, and meets a mild-mannered electrical technician named Prosper Thompson. He offers solid ground. She accepts. Yet on quiet nights she still fingers the faded leather of the poem book, decoding memories into size. In mid-1947, a new scarcity grips Australia, the scarcity of clear alliances. Churchill's Iron Curtain speech echoes through Parliament halls. Soviet consulates bristle with unseen antennae. A SIO forms embryonically, staffed by veterans who once shared Boxall's clandestine decks. They know Japanese codes are history. The next cipher writes itself in Cyrillic. Rumor whispers of Soviet illegals slipping through neutral ports, their cover stories pressed as neat as the Somerton Man suit. It is against this backdrop that Jessica receives a letter postmarked Kubyshev Urs, addressed in spidery Cyrillic to an alias she used only once, Stanya. The envelope contains no message, only the torn final page of a Russian edition of the words Konets scrawled in red pencil, Russian for the end. She burns the page over the kitchen sink, ashes whirling up the flue like black snow. Prosper, tinkering with a Bakelite radio, asks if something's wrong. She says a pot boiled over. November 1948. Jessica's son, Robin, toddles in footed pajamas, ears that fan outward, calf muscles unusually defined. Newsprint at the corner shop blares headlines of Soviet atomic progress. Jessica feels old circuits. Relighting wire recorder kisses, vowel cipher elegies, the weight of coded love letters pressing her purse. One evening she opens Boxall's gift, traces the penciled acrostic, and tears out the final words. Shud. She folds the scrap into a locket of hope and dread, hides it in a secret pocket she sews into her skirt's waistband, a seamstress's sleight of hand learned in hospital theaters. She tells herself it is closure. 6 days later, a stranger in an immaculate brown suit climbs the Henley Beach train at Adelaide Station, ticket unpunched. He carries a battered suitcase. Left years earlier on a Hillman Minx back seat. And in his waist belt pocket, Jessica's scrap bearing the Persian full stop, who he meets between railway platform and Somerton seawall, remains unfixed in history's ledger. What he drinks from hip flask, syringe, or stranger's gloved hand passes through his organs like a whispered instruction to cease. Night folds him into the seawall's shadow. Dawn will unfurl him into legend. Back in Sydney, Boxall flips through the morning paper. A photo catches his eye. Dead man on beach, handsome even in rigor. Something about the angle of the jaw, the set of the shoulders. Boxall's hand trembles. His whiskey midday tumbler cracks. He walks to the bookcase, fingers the spot where once stood, now replaced by naval manuals. His memory chips loose a single Persian phrase he hasn't spoken since 45. Shud. It is finished, but not for us, listener. In Chapter 3, we trail the battered suitcase left in Adelaide Station's cloakroom. Its stenciled orange thread, its enigmatic laundry marks, its peculiar roll of zinc oxide plaster perhaps purchased for more than blisters. Follow the handles, worn leather, sometimes fingerprints outlast flesh. Chapter 3, labels cut, threads unraveling, December 3, 1948. Adelaide railway station echoes with the clatter of porters wrestling holiday luggage onto trolleys. But Detective Sergeant Lionel Lean's attention fixes on one modest brown suitcase resting in the left luggage cage. Tag number 8943 has expired. Nobody has claimed it since the morning before the Somerton Beach body surfaced. The attendant unlocks the wire door, slides the case forward. Its hide is scuffed, handle mended with a strip of tawny leather travel scarred. Yet oddly elegant, like a diplomat who's slept in too many carriages. Lean spreads butcher's paper across a bench evidence must not bruise. He prizes the brass locks. The lid rises on tired hinges and exhales the faint scent of cedar and moth flake. Inside, one pair of sharp-pointed scissors, barber quality, tips coated with a residue that lab will later identify as zinc stearate remnant of adhesive plaster. A small screwdriver, flat-bladed, handle whittled to fit snugly inside a closed fist. A spool of barber orange waxed thread irregular thickness. Imported only to a handful of Adelaide haberdasheries. Laundry bag labeled KEAN in stencil black, yet every letter sewn not with black thread but with the same vivid orange. Undershirt, singlet, and pair of trousers, all painstakingly stripped of manufacturer tags but each bearing faint laundry pencilings. 11637, 43931, 13937, a saucer-sized tin of Boots zinc oxide plaster. Nearly full -1 strip, folded card of Bassett's Pastilles expired, U.S. manufactured shaving brush whose bristles are dark with soap but show no fingerprint powder when tested. Lean photographs, catalogs, reseals. He knows laundry marks. Can map a life more reliably than passports. He wires inquiries to every steam laundry across Australia. Replies trickle in like monsoon drops. None recognize the sequences, not one. Either the garments circulated through private laundries or the marks are code masquerading as domestic order. The scissors and screwdriver draw customs eyes. Both have nickel plating inconsistent with Australian mass manufacture, edges honed beyond utilitarian sharpness. Armory technicians speculate the screwdriver could pop radio set chassis or uncap poison ampules with minimal noise. The zinc oxide plaster, perfect for sealing vials inside false heels, cushioning glass against clink. Lean scratches his jaw. Each civilian item whispers dual use. Thread becomes his North Star. Barber's agent confirms only 2 Adelaide stores carried orange waxed linen that season. At O'Reilly and Sons, a clerk recalls selling a spool to a man with an accent hard to place, maybe New Zealand but refined. He bought darning needles too, asking if the thread frayed under seawater. The second shopkeeper remembers nothing. Ledger pages from November week are missing. Lean walks Somerton's and at twilight orange thread looped round his finger. He imagines the stranger trimming tags from shirts in a boarding house room, sewing secret seams until fingertips blister, binding poison file 2 plastic combs. Hollow handle with zinc plaster, then dressing in immaculate suit as though the beach were merely another railway platform. Yet if suicide, why conceal identity so thoroughly? Why carry unused train and bus tickets? Why exchange one brand of cigarettes for another? Each answer spawns a brood of sharper questions. Mid-December, a letter arrives from Sydney Water Police addressed care of Somerton Inquiry. They forward a report from June 1945. Patrol officers intercepted a bearded man photographing garden. Island Naval Yard at dusk. He carried a small screwdriver and scissors sealed in a toiletries pouch. He gave the name Carl Thompson Keane. No fixed address, was fined and released when camera proved empty of film. Attached mugshot reveals cheekbones, ear shape, hairline strikingly twinned to Somerton mask sans beard. The file slid into wartime chaos, never pursued. Lean circles the surname Keane. The laundry bag in the suitcase reads K-E-N yet. clothing tags were sheared. The single name left untouched, like a breadcrumb meant to be found, deliberate misdirection. Spycraft often plants decoy identity strands. But there is a subtler possibility. Keane was never his name, merely a phonetic skeleton he could abandon. Confident investigators would chew on it while the true trail cooled. Cryptanalysts at Naval HQ still scour the penciled letters from the patterns bloom then wither. No acrostic matches Quranic surahs. No cipher wheel yields coherent plaintext. Yet one analyst, Elt Gwyneth Abbott, overlays the letters atop Adelaide-Melbourne rail timetable codes. She notes coincidences. The sequence Malayo aligns with 5 consecutive train numbers departing 29 November. She presents the theory. The code is a travel log mapping the Somerton Man's route across Victoria, New South Wales, back to South Australia. Her superior files it under interesting but inconclusive, black stamps the memo, and tells her future Cold War budgets demand stronger evidence than coincidence. December 26, a telegram arrives from Canberra's fledgling security service. Alert issued regarding unidentified body intersects possible Soviet courier network active Port Adelaide to Fremantle. Orange waxed thread flagged in prior intercept as packaging sealant for micro-reels. Lean rereads the line until letters blur. He pictures that lone spool inside the suitcase, bright as signal flare in a sea of drab cloth. Not a clue, but a signature. Yet espionage fails to explain 2 final puzzles. First, the half-smoked Kensitas placed on the dead man's lapel, outward of prevailing sea breeze. Sergeant Porter in fingerprint section suggests it was arranged post-mortem stagecraft, inviting misinterpretation. Second, the calm expression. Poison often twists muscles in agony, but Somerton Man's lips formed a faint, resigned smile. Cleland's revised report speculates digitalis overdose undetectable after hours in bloodstream, capable of cardiac paralysis without convulsion. Zinc oxide plaster could bandage injection site on thigh, hidden by trouser pleat. Suicide returns. To the podium, clears its throat. Lean visits Jessica Thompson again, January 14, 1949. Robin plays on the carpet, rolling a rubber ball with startling agility for an 18-month-old. Lean notices the child's ear. Upper concha fuses to Simba in a rare genetic fold mirrored in Somerton mask. Jessica's smile flickers. She offers tea laced with silence. Lean asks if Robin's father might be from abroad. She presses a hand. To her throat, whispers, "Some things end themselves." The interview ends there. An inquest reconvenes February. Coroner Thomas Cleland declares cause of death unascertained. File remains open. The press gradually migrates to fresher tragedies, but clues left to salt and time sometimes calcify into fossils historians dig later. Forensic science will evolve. DNA swabs from embalmed hair, isotopacies tracing molybdenum ratios in teeth. AI reconstructions of phonemes hidden in penciled letters, pressure graphs. Each future tool will tug new threads from that orange spool. In Chapter 4, we jump decades forward to 1978 and a retired cryptographer haunted by an unsigned Christmas card reading simply, "Shud." He'll piece together a theory tying telephone exchange maps, Jessica's nursing rosters, and Soviet shipping manifests, a mosaic that might finally show the Somerton Man's face in full. Or it may shatter, leaving only grains of beach scent you can still feel between these words. Chapter 4, Ghost Frequencies of 1978, Adelaide, December 1978. 3 decades since Somerton Beach surrendered its immaculate corpse, pound notes have become dollars. Steam locomotives have yielded to air-conditioned interstates. But in the spare bedroom of a weatherboard cottage in Unley, retired Royal Australian Navy cryptographer Malcolm Gwynn still keeps 2 cardboard archives marked Somerton and Rubáiyát. Yellowed teletypes, faded negatives, and brittle bakelite tape sway the shelves like unblown fuses. His wife, Elspeth, calls the room the mausoleum. Malcolm calls it unfinished duty. He is 63, thick-spectacled, and newly prone to midnight migraines. On Christmas Eve, a plain white envelope arrives without stamp hand-delivered. Slipped under the door. Inside is a single Xerox of the Somerton Man death mask, reverse printed so the face appears ghostly white on charcoal background. Across the forehead someone has typed Tamám Shud in red carbon ribbon. No return address, no fingerprints beyond Malcolm's own. The following night a second envelope appears, this one postmarked Hobart but bearing no sender. It contains a strip of quarter-inch magnetic tape wound on a plastic spool. A sticky note reads, "Play me at 350 Hz. Malcolm dusts off it and Berg reel to reel, threads the tape, dials speed to 3 IPs, and presses play. A low, pulsing tone emerges 3 seconds on, 2 seconds silence, then again, repeating with hypnotic patience. He recognizes the rhythm instantly, the 5-line cipher penciled in the displayed 5 clusters separated by spaces. Malayo impt pabe mab, and the pattern of long short spacing on the tape mirrors the letter group. Sizes. Elspeth knocks, concerned. Malcolm waves her away, gooseflesh sprouting beneath his dressing gown. He overlays the waveform on an oscilloscope. Each on pulse averages 350 Hz but modulates 13 HK in a sine sweep. 13 a prime that features repeatedly in the suitcase laundry marks July 1163, July 1393. Coincidence? Maybe. Malcolm rewinds, listens again, slower. With speed halved, faint artifacts surface beneath the tone, an irregular hiss and distant popping, like shellac scratches or far-off Morse. He digitizes the snippet using a borrowed DEC PDP terminal. Runs spectral subtraction and reveals sideband peaks at 1.04 kHz, unmistakable amplitude shift keying used in clandestine VHF burst transmissions during the late 1940s. Malcolm exhales a curse. Someone is taunting him with a fragment of Cold War traffic he chased but never pinned. Driven by old habits, he pulls the Somerton file. He rereads Gwyneth Abbott's memo train timetable overlay dismissed by brass. He re-examines liens. Suitcase inventory, noting items investigators considered mundane. Bassett's pastilles expired and Boots brand plaster. He scribbles on a pad, Bassett 8 letters correlates with cipher line number 4, 8 letters MABIQ. Truncated. Boots plaster tin measured 65 mm diameter, the same diameter as the Alsip coin cell batteries powering 1940 seconds covert transmitters. Could the suitcase items have formed a portable shortwave set? At dawn, he phones the last surviving colleague from the Naval Cryptanalysis Pool, Ernest Dig Walden. Walden worked Soviet intercepts in '52 before defectors provided one-time pads used by KGB residencies. Over percolated coffee they spin possibilities. Somerton Man as Soviet courier dumping last signals after a compromised meet. As Me-5 illegal. Burning legend paperwork. As commercial chemist sampling radioactive ore from Woomera tests. Walden reminds Malcolm of Project Venona, still partially classified. Malcolm suspects the cipher in the lines is not text but frequency allocations, each letter mapping 2 kHz offsets keyed from the poem. Under that lens, Malayo might signify 31295 kHz and HF band near Soviet trawler channels. He photocopies the death mask again, pins it above his workbench, and jots coordinates beneath: 34, 98s, 138, 51 E Somerton Beach. Beneath that he writes 43, OOS 147, 32 E Hobart outbound mail sort facility. 2 points form a triangle, with Sydney at apex. He draws the lines, wonders whether the envelope's Hobart postmark is a breadcrumb. On Boxing Day, he drives to the Adelaide General Post Office, requests CCTV logs, none kept 15 years earlier. The clerk shrugs. Malcolm heads to the Torrens Island Transmission Archive, seeking VHF logs from late '48. Most tapes erased, but a reel labeled Deck 48 in Toros survives. He threads it, static roars, then a faint pulse 3 seconds on, 2 off, matching his mystery tape. A voice overlay decodes to a distant moon is telling me IT is finished in English but truncated repeatedly. He freezes, the phrase resonates with cosmic fatalism. Returning home, he finds Elspeth on the porch reading an old women's magazine from 1949. An article headline catches Malcolm's eye. Mystery man suited to the end, 30 of Adelaide's unclaimed dead. He asks where she found it. She gestures to a box labeled Cousin Jessica. Heart-jolting, Malcolm recalls that Jessica Thompson's married surname was Prospers. Her maiden Harkness once intersected Navy social rosters. He flips pages. A sepia photo shows Jessica standing among other hospice nurses receiving commendations. Caption: Sister Jessica Harkness of Somerton District Hospital. She too had connections to the beach. Tam Malcolm drafts a letter to Jessica, now widowed, politely requesting an interview. Before he can mail it, a third envelope appears, this one containing nothing but a Polaroid of a toddler executing. A perfect gymnastic tumble on Glenelg sand. On the back, a rubber-stamped quote, "My heart has beat so fast that I have lost both breath and soul. Rubáiyát. Malcolm checks the index. In Fitzgerald's 5th edition, stanza 97 is indeed the quoted line. The staging feels theatrical spycraft or elaborate hoax, but by whom? Only someone intimate with the case and Fitzgerald's rarer variant printings. New Year's Eve, Malcolm meets Jessica Thompson on her veranda in Mosley Street, Glenelg. She's 73, hair silver, eyes still ocean calm. When she sees the death mask Xerox, she doesn't flinch. She sighs as though expecting this page of history to turn up. Malcolm asks if she dropped the envelopes. She shakes her head. He plays the tape. She closes her eyes, lips silently reciting. She finally speaks. "I recognized him, you know." Her voice trembles, not by name, by purpose. "He came to tell me a promise was forgiven." She reveals fragments. A summer night in 1947, a stranger knocked, spoke broken English laced with Slavic vowels, asked for Tanya, the code name her Soviet-friendly classmates teased her with at nursing college. He delivered a message typed on hotel stationery, "Your rose has ripened, prepare the ashes." She thought it an eccentric poet until she saw his smile-matched Boxall's sketches, a multilingual courier retrieving the final scrap of a cipher book she'd given away. She panicked, refused, claimed ignorance. He left. Months later he reappeared at the beach dead. Scrap returned to his pocket. Anxiety devoured her. She changed her story whenever police called. Malcolm asks if she wrote the Hobart envelope. Jessica smiles sadly. "I'm done writing endings." She hands him a small cloth pouch. Inside lies a Barber orange waxed thread spool, identical to the suitcases but pristine. "Weaving done," she says, eyes glistening, before Malcolm can press further. A taxi pulls up. Jessica tells him the driver will take him to Stinky Jude's cemetery. "What you seek is waiting," she whispers, retreating indoors. T Statey Jude's groundskeeper's shed. Malcolm finds another reel-to-reel deck powered by car battery. A note taped to the lid, 350 Hz final. He threads the reel, the pulsed. Tone plays, but this time it's lows, pitch decaying until it forms whispered syllables. "So long, Tanya, no more codes." The tape ends with a beach wind rush, then silence. Malcolm stands among tombstones, the smells of eucalyptus and wet earth mixing with salt breezes from the Gulf. He realizes the ghost frequencies have served their purpose. They guided him here. To bear witness, to close the circuit between Somerton Man and Jessica, between coded lust and mortal surrender. He does not know if espionage, revenge, or doomed love lay at the core, perhaps some alloy of all three, but he senses the final pulse fade like a heartbeat slipping beneath morphine's tide. He pockets the spool of orange thread back home. He locks the mausoleum and labels a new folder Tam Truly. He will die 5 years later, strokes silencing the cryptographer in him, but the file will pass to a granddaughter who becomes a forensic geneticist. She will add fresh pages in Chapter 5. We'll follow her 2007 effort to extract mitochondrial DNA from the plaster mask and match it to graves beneath Kiev's snowdrifts and suburban Adelaide backyards, chasing ancestry across continents, until then imagine Somerton Beach at midnight this New Year's Eve, tide tracing foreign alphabets on sand before waves erase every letter. The scrubby pines hiss, the lighthouse sweeps, and somewhere in the static between stars, a 350 Hertz stone plays only for those who once listened. Chapter 5 Bloodlines written in bone dust. Adelaide's skyline has sprouted glass spires. Mobile phones chirpin'. Along Rundle Mall, and the internet hums with crowdsourced sleuths resurrecting Somerton Man under every true crime forum tag. In a fluorescent laboratory at Flinders University, Dr. Amelia Gwynn, granddaughter of cryptographer Malcolm, pops open a manila folder marked Tam Truly. Inside lie her grandfather's final notes, the spool of barber orange thread, and a brittle clipping. DNA technology may soon unlock 1948 beach mystery. The article is 5 years old. Amelia smiles. Soon is now. She stands 5'3", hair in a practical bun, latex gloves already powdered. Her PAAHDAADDDDHEHE centers on mitochondrial DNA recovery from compromised samples. Police have finally granted controlled access to the Somerton Man's plaster death mask, stored for decades in a climate-stable vault at the South Australian Police Museum. It once belonged to Dr. John Burton Cleland. Now it rests on a foam cradle like a relic awaiting resurrection. With micro-drill and sterile catch paper, Amelia extracts 2 milligrams of calcite dust from behind the left ear, location least likely to disturb facial features. She dissolves the powder in EDTA buffer, adds proteinase K, then spins vortex tubes under tiny hums. In adjoining fume hood, a colleague isolates a control sample to track contamination. The lab smells faintly of bleach, ethanol, and something. Older history flaking into solution. Over 48 hours, the extraction yields 15 picograms of mitochondrial DNA, barely a whisper, but enough for PCR amplification. Amelia targets HV1 and HV2 regions, laying the sequencer's blinking cursor. 4 hours later, base calling software scrolls peaks of fluorescent color A's, G's, T's, C's coalescing into haplotype H10101, common in Northern Europe but the devils in subclades. An insertion at 315.1C suggests Baltic ancestry. Another mutation at 16278C points toward coastal Lithuania, maybe Latvia. She cross-checks the MPOP database. The closest statistical matches are found in 1930s passenger manifests of Latvian seafarers emigrating through Fremantle. She emails liaison CTT Chloe Maroulis. Need access to SA maritime crew lists 1945-48. Focus on Baltic nationals. Within days a thumb drive arrives. Scanned ledgers from Port Adelaide Harbour Masters office. Amelia runs fuzzy match algorithms against surnames beginning Keen or Kajan. One record leaps out. Carl-Jan Abel Seaman, SS Kalinga, birth Adelaide, November 13, 1948, shore leave 48 hours, failed to report departure, logged deserter, birthplace. Latvia, distinctive scar noted behind right ear, a match to Cleland's autopsy sketch showing 3 centimeter healed cicatrix behind left pin, a mirror view in death mask. Amelia cross-references Australian naturalization rolls, no Carl-Jan, electoral rolls, nothing. She checks Soviet MGB archives via Lithuanian digital portal, a 1956 report listing. Janice Keynes as suspected defector, last traced. Sydney, August 47. She prints grainy mugshot, high cheekbones, wide upper ear profile, hazel eyes. The resemblance to the death mask is uncanny save for a beard stubble evident in 1945 photo, same as the Garden Island bearded photographer file. Her pulse quickens. Before going public, she seeks nuclear DNA confirmation, but Somerton Man's remains lie embalmed and interred under concrete. Exhumation petitions stalled for decades. Amelia pivots. She requests permission to sample Robin Thompson's preserved dental impression archived in a private pathology collection made when Jessica's son entered ROF cadet program in 1966. Ethics board hesitates, then concedes. The donor deceased, next of kin unreachable. Enamel powder yields YSTR profile R1AM558, a haplogroup common to Baltic men. If Somerton Man shares paternal line, Robin might be his direct son. Mitochondrial inheritance alone cannot prove paternity. But autosomal SNPs can suggest close kin. Amelia's lab owns an Illumina Omnique's Pris chip. She scrapes minuscule pulp residue from Robin's molar cavity, amplifies and draws 520,000 loci. She then compares against degraded autosomal fragments coaxed from Somerton mask sample using whole genome isothermal amplification. Coverage is patchy, only 16,000 overlapping SNPs, but kinship algorithm King outputs a kinship coefficient of 0.2 for 5. That sits between half-sibling and grandparent or grandchild, considering haplogroups, physical resemblance, and Jessica's. Morgue reaction. Amelia drafts a conservative conclusion. Likelihood Somerton Man is biological father of Robin Thompson, 91. Press offices explode when the embargo lifts. Headlines trumpet. Beach mystery man likely fathered local son. Baltic sailor ID. Jessica Thompson has passed, but her daughter Kate grants sparse interviews. Mum took secrets to grave. I'm glad science keeps digging. Amateur detectives flood forums, triangulating shipping logs, spy diaries. Asayo refuses comment. CTT Maroulis invites Amelia to present findings at a closed multi-agency symposium in Canberra. The room brims with historians, intelligence officers, geneticists. Amelia narrates step by step. When she reveals the haplogroup lineage, a great Empald analyst named Peter Kovacs shifts in his seat. During break, he hands Amelia a declassified fragment from 1951, a cipher intercept referencing Russian for bridge. Tamam and an instruction, darning with orange thread, confirms completion. Amelia's breath catches orange thread as dead drop authentication. Her grandfather's spool was literal proof of mission accomplished. Kovacs confirms Carlyon was flagged as GRU courier, codename Orange, seem believed to carry microfilms of British-Australian missile telemetry from Woomera. He boarded SS Kalinga disguised as wharf laborer, slipped ashore to contact Tanya Jessica as cutout, retrieve cipher key scrap, and verify film receipt with orange thread. Something failed. Maybe Australian counterintelligence closed in. Maybe Jessica panicked. GRU protocol for compromised couriers involved self-quieting via digitoxin ampules sewn into jacket lining, embalming, and decades of degradation. Hid traces, the symposium's final resolution, not enough evidence for official identification, but Amelia's data pushes exhumation request over the line. In May 2008, forensic teams raised the zinc-lined coffin, soil acidity preserved hair. Root sheaths beneath embalming fluid crust, STR testing cues. Month later, lab emails Amelia at 3:27 a.m. STR match 99.98% to Robin Thompson's autosomal parent child. Carlyon Ake Somerton Man stands named at least genetically. Latvia's National Archives supply a 1938 merchant seaman ID card, full name Carlos Kinins, born 1912. Mother Claudia Kenina. Occupation oiler. Scar behind ear from childhood mastoid surgery. Facial composite morphs seamlessly into death mask. Media frenzy reignites. Isaio quietly seals parts of symposium minutes. Public hears tidy narrative, mystery. Solved tragic Cold War spile of story. Jessica's house sells as historical landmark. Somerton Beach becomes midnight pilgrimage site for Cold War romantics, leaving roses and copies of the final page intact. Amelia visits her grandfather's grave, places spool of orange thread atop headstone. Wind picks the loose end, spirals it into dusk like Morse dashed across sky. She whispers, "Shud, pack," but even she knows mysteries rarely bow at a single gravestone. She keeps the barber spool's cardboard core, it rattles. Inside, she discovers a sliver of microfilm, latitude, longitude, date Woomera, 1949, and one word handwritten in Cyrillic. Forget. In Chapter 6 we rewind again, this time through newly declassified 1949 Woomera security logs, tracing how one missing courier might have shifted missile telemetry. Why a scrap could cost nations billions in arms races. The beach corpse's smile may yet widen into geopolitical grin. Chapter 6 echoes over Woomera. Woomera Prohibited Area, South Australia, August 1949. Beyond red ochre dunes and shimmering salt pans, a lattice of steel gantries pierces the searing sky like half-forged arrows. Here the Anglo-Australian long-range weapons establishment launches blue streak rockets and test fires guided bombs whose trajectories, if ever perfected, promise to redraw the map of post-war power. The desert quivers under temperature mirages, and under secrets heavier than uranium. Security is a matryoshka of clearances, outer cordons staffed by ROF conscripts, inner rings by Mi-5 veterans with sun-pink tears tuned for Slavic sibilants. Yet even in a fortress, a single loose thread can unravel the weave, especially if that thread is orange and waxed. August 7, 1949. Flight Lieutenant Jeffrey Morgan, Range Telemetry Officer, records a telemetry dropout lasting exactly 7.0 seconds during a blue sky missile ascent. At T+22 seconds, downrange antennas at Lake Hart receive a brief 350 Hz pulse riding the S-band carrier, identical frequency to the mysterious tape Malcolm Gwynn discovered decades later. Morgan logs the anomaly, stamping the sheet repeat. Investigation. Hours afterward, a field patrol discovers a fresh boot print near a service hatch of antenna A3. The print is narrow, high-arched European rather than Australian issue. Lodged in cracked clay is a tiny curly queue of bright orange thread, waxy to the touch. The find is dismissed as detritus from a fly-in maintenance crew, but a young signals lieutenant pockets it, scribbling odd color for desert gear. August 9. A shipment of range films high-speed footage of warhead separation tests departs Woomera by ROF Dakota bound for Sydney's Defence Film Lab. At Richmond Air Base, canister #D-311 appears dented. The courier notes the SEAL's lead. Tag bears a hairline slice, solder ray flowed. Inside, one film reel has been replaced by blank leader spliced with segments of the printed onto 16 stock. The last frame, magnified, shows two Persian words. Shud. Panic skitters through corridors built of corrugated tin and hush. British liaison Sir Charles Moorcroft cables London. Evidence of hostile acquisition. Initia top drift net. Mi-5 dispatches Cyril Jarvis, codebreaker turned counter-spy, to audit every civilian contractor at Woomera, cooks, laundry drivers, even volunteer nurses at the settlement hospital. Among the files he finds a medical log entry dated August 5. Visitor in Burns ward, presented as Karl Keen, Latvian sailor, seeking ointment for blister. The nurse describes a neatly bearded man, well-spoken, accent unplaceable, wearing a brown suit too heavy for desert heat. He disappears before Jarvis can question him. Jarvis correlates, Latvian accent, brown suit, thread. He sends urgent bulletin. 2 Commonwealth ports. 2 weeks later, South Australian police intercept a telegram sent to a Port Augusta shipping agent. The message, keen impossible, terminate in sea air. Sea air is colloquial cipher for Glenelg coastline. Among Baltic seafaring circles dating back to 1930s smuggling runs. The telegram arrives one day before Carl Jan Somerton Man boards a southbound train. Jarvis pieces together a likely route. Jan transports stolen range footage on microfilm concealed in hollow handle of his US shaving brush, sealed by zinc oxide. Plaster. The orange thread is a verification token. He must deliver the film to Soviet cutout Tanya in Glenelg. She confirms transfer by returning final pages of creating a matched set book and scrap proving courier's success, but Tanya Jessica balks. Without authentication, Moscow Center orders fallback. Shud the courier must silence himself, leaving the Persian phrase as badge of mission aborted. Self-poisoning ensures captured agent cannot betray cell networks. Body placement on public beach serves as cautionary tale to wavering assets. Loyalty until death. In 1949, Mi-5 cannot publicly allege Soviet penetration without exposing radar weaknesses and admitting how close the GRU came to Blue Streak secrets. Instead, Jarvis files internal memo, threat neutralized via self-prescribed measure, recommend psychological pressure be maintained on aligned nurse asset. The case is shelved. Jessica is quietly surveilled until 1955 when budget cuts shift focus to nuclear spies in Britain. Files remain classified for 70 years until Amelia's genetics force reopening. Back to 2008, Amelia obtains declassified fragments of OpDriftNet. She overlays Carl Jan's projected infiltration. Route onto modern satellite images. Waypoints correspond to all 5 letter clusters in the code: Melayo Merla, Lee Creek, Iron Knob, and Damuka, Udnadata, a logical hopscotch following trucking depots delivering radio masts to Woomera. Each stop times out with a coded pulse in archived VHF logs matched by Malcolm. She publishes peer-reviewed paper Phylogenetics meets Cold War intelligence, reconstructing the Somerton network. Historians erupt. Skeptics cry circumstantial. Amelia counters with chemical forensics. Trace zincs tearate in suitcase, scissors, matches, boots, plaster adhesives still detectable on shaving brush handle, lus digitalis glycoside residues consistent with self-administered digitoxin, stable even after embalming. Yet a final gap looms. What became of the stolen film? If self-poisoned, did Jan hide the microdot elsewhere? CTT Chloe Maroulis combs Glenelg property records, finding a boarded-up coach house once leased to a Bulgarian immigrant who vanished in 1949. Under floorboards, renovation workers in 2010 discover a tin of Basset pastilles. Inside, 6 developed. Microdots showing Blue Streak engine schematics. The film dates to tests 3 days before Jan died. He completed his drop before ingesting poison. Jessica, terrified, never passed the packet to her Soviet handler, instead bribing the Bulgarian caretaker to bury it and flee. Thus, the operation failed anyway, but Jan's mission was technically finished. The microdots now reside in Defense Signals Directorate's vault. Amelia views a digitized copy, grainy, water-stained frames of rocket chambers. She realizes Baltic courier died believing success, unaware his sacrifice was moot. The tragedy shifts from espionage chess. Piece to human pawn moved, then discarded by distant masters. Amelia visits Somerton grave a second time. New headstone now reads Crulis Janus Kenny 1912 to 1948. She lays dried heather from, and a copy of the restored to completeness final words intact as sea breeze combs her hair. She whispers, not finished, understood. In chapter 7 we'll trace the ripple. how Blue Streak's partial compromise pushed Britain to cancel the missile in 1960, reshaping NATO deterrence, how a single orange thread indirectly nudged the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. And we'll revisit Jessica's son Robin acrobatic prowess, hinting at inherited secret programs showing that even resolved mysteries seed new enigmas across generations. Chapter 7, Aftershocks in Orbit and Blood. History seldom records the moment a single thread snaps inside a vast tapestry, but if you follow the fray long enough, you'll find loose fibers everywhere. The orange waxed thread that stitched Soviet certainty to a Latvian courier on Somerton Beach would, over 12 complicated years, tug at missiles, treaties, and even the cartilage of an unborn gymnast. January 1960, London, Insided Rab Concrete. Annex at Whitehall, the British Cabinet Defence Committee convenes under damp fluorescence. At stake, the future of Blue Streak, the intercontinental ballistic missile conceived to project Commonwealth muscle across hemispheres for months' civil service. Mandarins have juggled budgets, but a hush-hush report delivered this morning tips the balance. Compiled by Me 5 and shared only under thick red lines of secrecy, the memo chronicles a breach in 1949 Woomera telemetry stolen by a Soviet courier later found dead on an Australian beach. Prime Minister Harold Macmillan scans the synopsis. Operational parameters compromised, guidance algorithms potentially reverse-engineered by hostile state. He purses his lips, picturing taxpayer pounds incinerated faster than a first-stage booster. Treasury voices long opposed the project. Now they possess the perfect cudgel. Blue Streak is cancelled that afternoon. Publicly, officials cite spiraling costs. Privately, they fear launching a deterrent Russia already knows how to swat from the sky. In Washington, Air Force analysts chalk the cancellation to Britain's waning empire. In Moscow, GRU archivists celebrated decades-old win, unaware the stolen films molder beneath Adelaide floorboards. Butterfly wings beat. Deterrence doctrine tilts. Britain joins America's Polaris program instead, installing submarine-borne missiles that will redefine Cold War lines at sea. August 1962. Martha's Vineyard. U.S. Secretary of State Dean Rusk hosts NATO counterparts. Over highballs, British delegate Sir Patrick Dean alludes to earlier leaks that forced strategic pivot. American spooks scramble. They recall fragmentary intercepts of 350 Hz pulses but never traced provenance. An era of hypervigilance begins. Radio technicians comb every embassy rooftop for unexplained blips. The chain reaction leaps oceans, budgets, paranoia. Back in Adelaide, 1964, Robin John Thompson, Jessica's son, likely heir to Carl Juhn's Baltic genome, balances on a chalk line at North Glenelg Primary's sports day. Teachers gape as the 9-year-old flips into a near-perfect aerial somersault, landing with toes pointed, arms in gymnast salute. No coach taught him. Acrobatics seem baked into marrow. Local newspaper dubs him the Flying Thompson. Scouts from the Australian Athletics Union take notes, predicting Olympic potential. Robin trains obsessively, rope climbing rafters at dawn, wrists bound with tattered orange cloth he found in his late mother's sewing kit. He likes the color, reminds him, he says, of desert sunsets Jessica once described in lullabies. 1968. Robin enlists in the Royal Australian Navy as a clearance diver, a role marrying acrobatics and endurance. During a routine medical, a cardiologist notes his calf muscle insertion sits higher than average, like the Somerton Man. Blood type O rare. Finger lengths ratios mirror those of Latvian seafarers logged in Baltic anthropological charts. Genetics whispers across time, though Robin never hears the full story. Jessica, guarding ghosts, dies in 2007 before Amelia's revelations reach press. Meanwhile, the aftershock of Blue Streak's demise nudges diplomatic gears. Without a homegrown missile, Britain channels funds into joint satellite intelligence. Skynet 1 launches 1969, relaying encrypted traffic that eventually underpins NATO surveillance in the Balkans. Every image captured by those satellites shows a det, however, twisted to the orange thread that once verified a microdot drop. Adelaide 1975, a declassified Australian strategic policy memo reveals a pattern each time Woomera scheduled test. Launches in late 1940s, Soviet vessels loitered in international waters west of Eyre Peninsula, antennas cocked. The memo speculates an inside source marked launch dates with code groups matching the letters recovered from Somerton corpse. No court-ready evidence surfaces, but suspicion shadows Russian trawlers for decades, back to Robin 1982 during a joint exercise with us Navy SEALs. Robin free dives to 28 meters unaided, vision sparkling with hypoxia halos yet lungs steady. American medics dub him the Somerton Dolphin, not knowing the moniker's eerie accuracy. That night around campfire he fingers the orange cloth strip tied round his dog tags, unaware it flagged courier success long before he inhaled first breath. Present day 2025, Dr. Amelia Gwynn, asked to lecture at Cambridge on accidental pivot. Points of the Cold War, presents Blue Streak's cancellation as case study. Slide 1. Grainy beach photograph of a corpse elegantly dressed. Slide 2. Cabinet memo quoting compromised guidance algorithms. She threads causality for her audience. A dead man's silence ray-charted missile paths, which in turn seeded submarine deterrence, which influenced SALT treaties. Some skeptics huff too neat. Amelia counters with logic of genetics. Mutation appears random until lineage reveals pattern. After the lecture, a Lithuanian graduate student approaches, clutching a worn barber spool. It belonged to her grandfather, she says, a sailor who defected from a Soviet spy trawler in '52, claiming he recognized orange thread on a corpse photo circulated during briefing. He'd kept the spool as penance. The student asks if Amelia can test its cotton core for DNA oil traces. Amelia nods, threads multiply. Elsewhere, an aging archivist in Riga translates diaries of Claudia Kanina, Karl Jan's mother. 1. Entry 1937. Carlos obsessed with Omar's verses. Says world will end when one word is spoken. Another entry. Sent him orange waxed thread from market. Odd request for sailor. She never hears from him again after 1944, Amelia adds. Those pages to her file. She drafts a scholarly article positing that the GRU selected code artifacts deeply personal to their couriers, strengthening operational loyalty. For Carl, orange thread wove childhood into choreography of betrayal, making self-poison easier. A final stitch closing life's seam. Robin, now 70, receives Amelia's letter explaining her kinship findings. He spends a week contemplating the idea that the acrobatics, the calves, the ear fold, the restless love of sea might all trace to a Latvian spy who died before he spoke first word. At Somerton Beach he performs a slow cartwheel in sand stands. Where his father's body was found, he tis the orange cloth to a rusted railing, salutes and feels a peculiar lightness as though some double heel extension unwound. Geopolitics, genetics, and grief threads plaited by accident or design. Each observer decides, but one truth holds: a single clandestine death can ripple outward, altering missiles, treaties, families, and the very curve of a gymnast's sleep. In Chapter 8 we'll close the arc, returning one last time to Somerton Beach for a dawn ceremony, retiring the case file, and we'll ask what mysteries remain when answers finally fill margins that once beckoned speculation. Because Shud may claim finality, yet even full stops feed new sentences. Chapter 8, when the sea accepts the final word. Somerton Beach, 1 December 2025, 77 years to the day since a nameless man in a neatly pressed suit exhaled his last breath beneath this same pearl gray horizon. The shoreline has changed, dunes shifted, condominiums risen, but when first light spills across the Gulf Street Vincent, the water still glints with that aloof indifference only oceans command. Wind curls kelp strands into calligraphy no scholar can decode, and down near the seawall, a small semicircle of people gathers, each carrying a fragment of the story they have come to release. Dr. Amelia Gwynn stands at center, sand cool beneath her bare feet, clutching a slim archival box. Inside rests the Barber orange waxed thread original spool and its Latvian twin plus microfilm frames preserved between glass slides, and a single original page of the donated by a rare book dealer who decided mysteries belong to history, not vaults. Beside her, Sergeant Chloe Maroulis in dress blues. Robin John Thompson wearing a tan linen jacket that echoes, uncannily, the corpse's timeless style. And Latvian Ambassador Biruta Kalnia, holding a small cedar frame containing Karljan's merchant seaman ID card. They wait until the sun's rim breaks free of the ocean. Amelia nods to Robin. He steps forward, voice steady yet carrying generational tremor. My father, he begins, hasting the word as though it might shatter, was many things: courier, sailor, mystery, myth, but he was also a man who loved poetry enough to risk dying with a single stanza tucked against his heart. Whatever else we see in him, spy, pawn, ghost, that love makes him human, and that is what I choose to keep. He produces a crisp new edition of its Persian verses facing Fitzgerald's English. He has bookmarked stanzas licks. 'Tis all a checkerboard of nights and days where destiny with men for pieces plays. Hither and thither moves, and mates and slays, and one by one back in the closet lays. He reads it aloud. Waves hush as though leaning closer. Gulls wheel but do not cry. When he finishes, he tucks the book back into a canvas satchel and steps aside. Ambassador Kalnia follows, speaking first in Latvian, then in English. Across oceans and decades, a son of Latvia became part of Australia's legend. Today we honor not the politics that trapped him, but the courage that carried him and the sea that kept him. She pins a small red and white ribbon Latvia's flag onto the cedar frame, then plants the frame upright in damps and where the next tide will reach. CGT Maroulis and seals a police evidence pouch. Out slides the polished ID plate once affixed to Somerton Man's gravestone. Somerton Man died December 1st, 1948. It has been replaced by his true name stone. The redundant plaque resides here only for closure. Maroulis kneels, sets it beside the Latvian flag. File closed, she declares, not to Amelia or Robin, but to the shoreline itself. Amelia lifts the archival box. The lid's hinges creak softly, a vault sighing its final breath. She removes the spool of thread, now faded pumpkin rather than sunset orange, its wax dull. She loops a length around her index finger, feels tacky residue where Baltic salt once clung. It is lighter than she imagined. A decade of handling has thinned the linen, almost translucent against rising sun. She offers one end to Robin, the other to CGT Maroulis. The three of them stretch it gently until it forms a fragile arc catching golden light. For every question answered, Amelia says, another unravels. We honor that by leaving endings open enough for wonder, closed enough for peace. She nods. They let go simultaneously. The thread flutters, rides a playful gust, and drifts toward the surf. It lands upon a retreating wave, floats a heartbeat, then sinks, its final color diffusing like saffron in tea. Next she withdraws the microfilm slide. Even inside glass, the emulsion has begun to silver. She wades knee-deep, water-numbing shins, and lowers the slide until brine laps its edges. Sun glints once off the glass, the final flash of stolen secrets, then a swell covers it, drawing the tiny frames back to the element that once hid them. Last, Amelia takes the page. Its paper fibers are foxed, edges brittle onion skin. Thin, across the top margin her grandfather penciled. Truly. She folds the sheet into a paper boat, creasing carefully along verse lines, and sets it on the water next to Robin. The boat wobbles, rights itself, catches a ripple, and glides seaward, line after line of blurs as ink with salt. Yet the final Persian words remain legible. Shud, a silence heavier than any eulogy gathers. The gulf glimmers like beaten silver. The sky warms to rose gold. Then Robin raises a simpleton whistle. He plays a slow yalapka, an old Latvian lullaby about sailors returning home. The minor melody roams across the beach, weaving between broken marble of the seawall, seeping into cracked concrete where his father's body once rested. Amelia closes her eyes. Wind threads the tune through her hair. After the last note fades, the small group disperses. Ambassador Kalnia collects nothing. The tide will claim flag and plaque soon enough. CGT Marulis salutes the horizon, formal. Duty fulfilled, Robin lingers, tracing the waterline until he finds the spot where the paper boat vanished. He kneels, presses a palm, two damps and footprints, tire tracks, code groups, everything fades under moving water. This is comfort, not erasure. Amelia remains alone near the seawall. In her pocket lies a flash drive copy of every document, gene sequence, declassified memo. She will donate it to the State Library, catalogued for scholars unborn, but the physical artifacts now belong to tide and silt. She feels an unexpected relief, not triumph, not sorrow, but the stillness that comes when a spinning top finally balances before settling. She recalls her grandfather's frustration, Malcolm pacing his mausoleum of unanswered riddles. She wonders if he would smile now, seeing the thread's arc completed. Then she thinks of Jessica Tanya, who never stood on this beach after that night, who carried guilt like contraband within her breast pocket. Amelia whispers an apology. On behalf of time, for secrecy you called loyalty. For silence you called love. Wind carries the words to the gulf. Perhaps somewhere in myths, Jessica hears and exhales peace. Sunlight climbs, dog walkers appear, joggers pound pacts, and unaware they tread scenes of espionage, love, and forensic epiphany. The beach reverts to neutral ground. Only those who know can sense a hush beneath normal bustle, the hush of a cipher at last solved and set free. Years ahead, textbooks will footnote Somerton Man under headings of Cold War cloak and dagger and genomic identification. Some will debate Amelia's conclusions, propose alternate poisons, fresh suspects. That's what stories do. Evolve, replicate, refuse embalming. But the essence remains. A man crossed oceans with verse in his breast, thread in his case, mission in his marrow. His end wrote new beginnings, a missile cancelled, a treaty forged, a sun inspired to defy gravity. And along a quiet South Australian shoreline, destiny whispered two simple Persian words, meaning it is finished, leaving the rest for us to start. If this journey through espionage, genetics, and timeless poetry moved you, share the story with fellow seekers of hidden truths. Subscribe for more long-form narratives that peel back history's cryptic layers, and tap the bell so you never miss the moment a forgotten thread resurfaces. What mystery haunts your hometown's whispers? Tell us in the comments below. Your clue may spark our next investigation. Subscribe to Crazy Real Horror Stories. Together, let's keep listening for the faint signals beneath the ordinary roar and honor every story that ends with courage enough to say, Shud.